Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to today's webinar, The Future of Work with Kieran Gilmurray. I'm Rob King. I'm going to be your host today and ask Kieran a few of these questions. But before we kick off, I'd just like to do a quick introduction to Kieran. Kieran, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right, so Rob, currently I'm the Global Head of Intelligent Automation with Pearson Education, massive company, mission to try and transform or help people transform their lives with learning. I've been in industry for 25 years plus, worked on both sides of things, the IT side and the business side, and then spend my days translating between the two. So IT background, education background, operations background, now RPA, AI, digital, you name it, I get to do it. And a bit of blockchain in the title there as well.
And in fact, on your LinkedIn profile, you describe yourself as not your average leader.
Get a bit of publicity there to that one there, you naughty you. Yeah, no, I don't think I am. You know, very often you meet business people, you meet IT people. It's rare that you find both. I'm one of those in-betweeny people where I can comfortably split between languages and lexicons and all sorts of stuff like that. I see myself more from the business side because, again, like RPA, digital AI, it's there to get a business outcome. You know, it's not there as the thing in itself. And I think sometimes, and maybe this is something you see in the RPA industry that's getting a lot of flack at this moment in time, you know, it's not about the product, it's all about the outcomes. And when you lose focus on outcomes, you struggle a little bit. I never do. I know the mission, I know what we need to do, I know what technologies we need to apply, I know how to run projects, I know how to roughly keep everybody happy, and therefore I don't think I'm average at all. No. Open for debate though.
No, not at all. Having known you and sort of seen you speak at various conferences, I would agree you're definitely not average, and you've had a hell of a year really, because you were at IBM's Think in where was that, in San Francisco?
Yeah, great fun. Yeah. Got to speak on stage there. I have to say, slightly more nerve-wracking than this. There were a couple of hundred people in the room at the time. Really good fun though. Talking about something similar, Industry 4.0.
Yeah.
And I was in London Tuesday there doing a digital transformation talk.
So definitely getting around. That was for the launch of the UK chapter of the ERPA, I believe.
Yeah, I have to say, really good group, really interesting talk, and some fantastic people in that room. I can't wait to see that getting up and running. I know Frank Cashel's group before. I spoke for them in October, November 2017. Really good forum. I would recommend people jump onto that to listen and learn and join in those sessions if you can as well. A couple of brilliant architects in that room talking about AI, RPA, AI, and how, you know, none of them are a particular answer to anything in themselves. You know, the combination of the pieces of those technology with people, with process, you know, with good common sense as well, as I describe it, get you results. And again, good conversations about customers and people and focusing on end results. So I have to say, you know, well worth taking the time out of the room. Listening to me, maybe not, but it was good fun and the feedback was positive.
Yes, and I guess, you know, I mean, when we were sitting down and we was talking about planning today, and what were the types of questions that we were going to sort of ask and discuss, one of the comments that you gave was, you know, you always start a piece of work, you know, begin with the end in mind, and that's almost counter to the opposite, which was, you know, just start small and try and figure it out as you go. Why do you think starting with the end in mind, particularly when we're talking about, you know, Industry 4.0 and where it's going, why is that so important?
I think it's important for lots of reasons, Rob, to be absolutely honest. You know, if you take the amount of money that you sometimes need to put into projects, you know, if you go enterprise scale, I'll pick your enterprise RPA product, there's lots out there. You could easily be talking about, you know, $250,000 before you begin, you know, by putting a server in place, buying minimum number of licenses, you know, hiring the right people, bringing in, you know, someone who knows what they're talking about for RPA, AI sake, whatever you want. And I really recommend that. I do recommend experimentation as well, by the way, but you know, that's not an insignificant amount of money to attach your name / career to. And therefore, you know, if you're sitting there, if we're talking about AI, robots or whatever else, we're saying, does it work? The answer is yes, it does work. Will it work for you? Well, that's maybe a different question, you know. And what I always sort of say is, look, what is the business strategy? What are you trying to do as a business unit, as an enterprise or something else? Where are you trying to go? And I think any team, never mind a technical team, needs to understand what the business wants to do, what value are they creating, who are they creating it for. And when you develop a project, and again, a slight difference here, I see a lot of people doing project management. A wonderful thing I heard on Tuesday was actually we need to relabel that as product management. So instead of focusing on just delivering a good project, it's about delivering a good outcome or a good product to customers. Once you know where you're going, that's your context. Then you can work out whether you can contribute or not. And what I say is, as long as you understand the journey and you know where you're going, then you can get to the destination in numbers of different ways. And this starts small, I do agree with. I think it's easy to get a piece of freeware if you're talking about RPA, not the most perfect solution in the world, or work on to next level product, win automation or something like that from Softmotive to allow you to experiment with robotics if you want to do that. Find some process that are structured, repetitive, digital, follow that sequence of rules, can be workflowed or sensible, test the sides. You can do all that without spending big bucks at the beginning, but you really need to know where you're going. You need to make a decision whether something works or not. And once you, in my words, start small, in other words, experiment, do a proof of value or a proof of concept, I prefer proof of values, and have extra processes lined up where you're going next, then you can start to scale and then you can grow a little bit quicker. But there's a lot of learning to be done by teams. This is a nascent industry. There's lots of misunderstandings, miscommunication. Not everybody in this market is a 10-year veteran to deliver robots or AI or whatever else, and therefore getting the right team and understanding this and building your assets and building your change control and your governance, bringing people with you, your IT teams, your business teams, understanding what works or what doesn't work. All those things take time, whether you like it or not. They really, really do. You can scale. I get troubled with that sometimes, to be absolutely honest, because if you talk to all the vendors, that means, buying more and more robots. But as you and I mentioned the other day, when you grow the RPA Academy to 100 people and you were telling people in your business network, like I have 100 people working, 1 day a week, isn't it brilliant? You would never say that. And the same with robots. If I've got 100 robots, well, so what? What are they doing? Are they working at 100% of capacity? And as you move from one process, two processes, five robots, 10 robots, there's a whole different scale involved and a whole different layer of management and control. And the more you do and the more areas that you're actually impacting or helping, whatever way you want to put it, there's a whole new set of learnings and change controls and governance mechanisms and people and ways of working that you need to develop. And all that, again, takes time as well. But it is possible to scale really quickly as well. I've seen companies out in the network doing it. And again, to go back to what we're doing, I would recommend, finding people like you or me or others, who have done this, been there, ask the questions, attend the webinars, turn up at, for example, ERPA the other day as well, turn up at some of the conferences and use those sessions, to learn from what the people are saying up on stage, but most importantly, to network and ask questions, follow them on LinkedIn, join them or whatever else to learn just how do we begin. We know the technology works, but it has to be right for us. But I understand where we're now going, but I will begin in a small scale, do something that gets us a win, gets us a bit of publicity and all sorts of good stuff like that, because there's a competition for resources in every business. But I know where I'm going. So as soon as I finish my first pilot proof of concept or first process, I really want the next 10 listed in order so that I'm ready to go on those again and start building and growing quickly. But all the time looking back, learn your lessons, do this in an agile fashion, do your retrospectives so you constantly build in what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, what you need to stop doing, what you need to start doing, and what you need to continue doing. So all possible, but march of 1,000 miles begins with a step, but you need to know where you're marching to, otherwise you're going to end up in the wrong place, as lots do, as you know.
Yeah, and that's great advice. I think in terms of getting started, but I think particularly in terms of where you're going, and we'll bring it back to the future of work, and particularly sort of your presentation at Think was all about Industry 4.0. What are those skills and what are those things that we need to be thinking about today to be ready for 2030 and beyond?
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant question, Rob. It's something that, everybody should do all the time as part of their career or career choices is, I call it horizon scanning. And that's as an individual or as an enterprise, you need to see what the future looks like. And it's really, really hard to predict the future. That said, it hasn't stopped lots of people out there trying. And I've seen reports, of automation, everybody's going to lose their job, or roughly 47% are going to lose their job, down to 7%, and all sorts of what I, call some right and justified and some very unjustified media hysteria. It sounds great to say the world of work is going to change. It will, but you're going to lose your jobs. Maybe not as much as people think. Pearson did a survey, and they found, yes, jobs will be impacted, and I think it's free as part of this seminar is going to get sent, or webinar, people are going to get sent it. But what they said is it's more complex than just calling out job losses. So they started to look at 8 big key areas, like environment, like government, like industry, like technology, all these different things that are going to impact roles and jobs in the future. And you and I know, Rob, if you look back through time, right back to the Industrial Revolution or computer years of the 50s and 60s and mainframes of the internet and the 2000s or 90s, jobs have always changed. To make yourself valuable in that industry, to make yourself very employable, you need to look, what are the skills that companies want now? What do they need next year and the year after that? Yeah. And the key things, you'll know RPA is very key at the moment. I would recommend go out and do some training in that, learn. AI is big, digital is big, but when you're talking about jobs of the future and getting yourself ready, we discovered that, it's yes, having those technical skills, yes, indeed, but it's also about, having or developing fluency of ideas, develop deductive reasoning, come as an original thinker, offering new and better ways of working, as well as developing those skills. People skills as well, are absolutely key. You can see a point in time where, there's more remote working. Look, we're doing a webinar from a distance. You really need to be able to communicate with people really clearly and cleanly, and help lead from a distance, as it were. So there's no perfect recipe to say, look, what's going to happen, but like everything, look forward, look to AI, digital, RPA, look to those softer skills that people really excel in, the areas that are going to be driven by automation. And again, we have to be careful. It's not just low-level entry jobs. It's middle management jobs and above, all those are going to be impacted, and fantastic as well in many regards. If someone come in and said, look, I'll remove 50% of your role, all the mundane, monotonous, boring stuff, and I'll make, automated decisions, and I'll clean all that up for you, I bite their arm off, and do more interesting stuff. And I think revolutions, be they industry, 1, 2, 3, or 4.0, have proven time and time again, the more creative we are, the more human skills we apply to things, the more we grow industries and opportunities, and of course benefits for ourselves as well. So yeah, some occupations will shrink, they always have. Lots will change, and grow. You just want to make sure that you're actually part of that growth piece as well.
Yeah, no, that's good. I've got a follow up to that question, but before I do, I've just want to let all the audience know that there's an opportunity for them to ask questions too at the end of the webinar. So I see that we've got one question already in there, but if you haven't found it, there is a questions section on the menu bar. So please come and try and find that and come up with a few really hard questions, because I'm sure Kieran would love the hard questions. So yeah, sort of sticking with that theme is, what can people do to prepare for this change? I mean, we talked a little bit about the whole mindset. So what is it that they can take away from today and go, yes, that's something I need to do?
Yeah, so probably a couple of things. People often describe, learning for earning. I love that phrase. I learn for joy as well as earning. I think a couple of things, like change is always going to happen. So I think the more open and more flexible, and the more you lean towards accepting that change will come and that you need to change your skill set, and the more that you realize that, look, lifelong learning is an essential, the better. The skills that we have today, or probably, if you look back 10 years ago, we didn't need them. If you look forward 10 years time, we will need a new set of skills. Some of those things we've talked about, RPA, AI, digital, all those things, and the softer skills and the people skills and the emotional intelligence. First bit I would say is, look, be open to change. Things are, as someone said the other day, they've never been faster, but they're never going to be slower. And adopting a lifelong learning mindset as well, with an openness to change, is absolutely key. Then I think it's a little bit of, looking forward in your own career. So find things that you like, run toward them, find the things that you're good at, enjoy them, and that's something maybe you should be skilled at. Go to webinars, join a training academy. I see there will be more than traditional education happening, so not just university education, but shorter courses, online courses. You've seen lots of entries into the market offering, what I would call digital online learning. I think that's key to scan there. Find the things that you don't like, and run away from them. Find the things that maybe you're not good at, but you want to be good at and need to be good at for this market going ahead, and do some training or some formal education or some informal catching up with colleagues or at events or seminars or a whole host of different ways. But lifelong learning is absolutely key, and an ambition and drive to learn and to accept change and be part of that change, I think, is an absolute essential as well.
Yeah, and I think when we were planning this webinar, one of the facts you pointed out, and it's in the report as well, is the current generation is going to live to 100, and that's going to change everything.
Well, the scary bit is that live to 100 might have to work to 100. Is maybe either you take that as exciting or scary. But if like already people are living to 80s, 90s and beyond quite comfortably, that's into retirement. But medical care, everything else is getting better, which is extending our lives. So the longer we live, the longer we're going to have to work. So we could find, I've had 3-4 different careers already. I'm not 100 yet. I'm on my way toward it, no doubt. But that reinforces that idea that you will have more careers than your parents ever did. That's already happening. Some might be short-term gigs, some might be longer-term things, but you will need to retrain and relearn 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. If you live to 100 and work to 100, think about it. You start working in your 20s, get to 80, 60 years later, that's potentially 6+ careers if you work somewhere 10 years or more, So I think that need and that desire for organizations and people to look ahead and to, really forecast the skills that they will require and the roles that they will require, look at their core competencies and the strengths that they need to develop. I think that forward-looking piece is absolutely key. And as part of that forward-looking, that everyday learning or every year learning, that formal and informal education where you're adding bits to your knowledge bank is going to be absolutely essential. And again, like everything, Rob, yourself, you've probably done it a million times over, read the industry reports as to what's coming and the skills that are needed, look to the jobs that are on the job sites that are high in demand, and start, considering of those careers that you should jump into. We're talking about RPA today. There's a ton of new entries, jobs in there, technical, non-technical, manager, whatever else. AI is the same, digital web marketing, all those things. There's lots of different roles that people need, and they're not necessarily all technical because people need managed and led as well. And that's something, when we look at organizations moving forward, part of it is, working out your strategy, doing a SWOT to work out where your strengths lie, putting the right leadership roles in place. And people who are on this webinar and at the conferences, they're leading this industry, they're leading and learning as things go on ahead. They can perform key roles in companies, organizations that then set up a strategy and then encourage all of their folks, to have digital skills in some shape, form or other at every entry level, and every level all the way up through the organization is going to be absolutely key. And then executing in that, in an agile fashion. So you're talking about, agile training in there, some design thinking, lean for digital, all those types of skills in the digital world are absolutely key. Marketing, sales, social skills, social media skills, all those things are just really coming to the fore at the moment.
Yeah, and I think we've got, as an aside, we've got an upcoming webinar at the end of next month, and the title of that webinar is the growth mindset. And it's exactly as you say, it's trying to help people to understand they've got to think about their own careers. It's their own responsibility to start with, but they've got to their thinking about learning has to change, and it has to be exactly as you described, that continuous learning to move on to the next thing, to move on to the next career. In fact, as based on that. So I've got one more question. Before I jump into that question, I'm just going to prompt our audience, to look at that question section. I'll be happy to pass along those questions to Kieran. Kieran, who are you? To Kieran as soon as we finish the next question. So please sort of find that and send us a question. So the last question I've got, and it sort of relates a little bit back to the start small, think big, grow fast mentality. But but we looked at it from the very positive side when we asked this question earlier. But is there a negative side? Is there a risk to this that we need to spend more time thinking about?
I think there is, Rob, to be absolutely honest. If we take a very ethical approach looking at society, like everything in life, there'll be winners and losers,
Yeah.
and automation has the potential, as it always has, to create amazing opportunities and to allow, us as individuals and businesses and societies, to go forward with amazing things. I look on a daily basis, what I do with digital or automation technologies. Like yesterday, I was in London. I booked my flights on a website. I traveled on my mobile phone. I paid for stuff with my Apple Watch. My diary was controlled. I was communicating in a room, talking to people across the globe as well from different parts of the Pearson group, all from a single location. I'm sitting in an airport last night and I'm doing work that I needed to get done. I'm having a video call with my family. All those things have added, made me more productive, added positives to my life. But like everything, there will be jobs that will be impacted. There will be roles that change, and if individuals don't have that growth mindset, and if they're not preparing for that future, by attending training courses or learning, and as you said, my learning it's on me. It's my responsibility. I own it. Now, I do think that firms also have a responsibility to help their workers look toward that future and for them to horizons and understand where they're going. And in a world that's increasingly digital, start to form digital strategies that look to say, how can we deliver in a digital world? What are we going to do? How are we going to get our staff brought up to skill to allow them to do that? I think governments as well, there's a responsibility where society is going to be impacted and those roles that maybe won't exist in years to come. Okay, what are we going to do about that? Because there's no tax revenue. Those individuals are productive people. They want to work. So what tax advantages could be put in place? What retraining or training could be encouraged, by funding different institutions or learning zones, or encouraging people just in general to learn by helping them be more aware of the opportunities that are available or should be available, of the skills that they need. So, there's a whole ethical question in there as well that probably needs to be looked at and should be looked at.
Yeah.
I think that's key, absolutely key. As you do projects as well, if we start working our way back, it's on us to understand this area a lot better. Because if you do go back to my figure, for enterprise RPA to begin even, and you look at £250,000, well, organizations have only got finite resources. And you need to make sure that you are spending, your own money, if it's your own companies, or your enterprise's money in the smartest way possible. So where you can educate yourself as much as possible as to what's possible and what's not possible in the RPA, AI, or digital sphere, all the better. There's been lots of companies who've attempted to do RPA and haven't succeeded. I think the figures were 50% or more. You could probably tell me it's better. Have failed. I would guess from my talking to lots of those people who do it at conferences who are in the 50% that are succeeding. Lots are still in startup stage. Lots haven't scaled, whether you call it, multiple processes or multiple robots. So they're still learning as well. And if you can get yourself to a conference or link in with someone, all the better to understand like what might go wrong. Let's plan for those things and mitigate them. And where are we going, and rush toward that earlier on so that we plan for success at the same time. I think internally I have about 38 risk items that I identified as part of my RPA project, and the mitigations in place for every one of those before we began. And we do our retrospectives as we move every week, month, year. And we look back, make sure we are mitigating for anything that we have learned that is a risk or has not worked, and making sure that all the stuff that we're doing really well, we document and codify that, and then share that knowledge throughout the organization as well. So there's, this is an area you can get right. It's not hard, but it's not easy either, if that makes sense. So learning as much as you physically can before you begin this is absolutely key. But as I'm saying, jump in as well at the same time. It's not hard. You will learn the lessons. We have clever people on this chat. There's a lot you can learn and do yourself.
Yeah.
But be careful. Just look over your shoulder. What about your own learnings, Rob?
Yeah, and I think you sort of the process you described there, that the fact that your risks are a living document that you're constantly revisiting and reviewing, it's not rocket science, but it just adds so much good value. I've got some good questions for you. So I'm gonna stop asking my questions, and I'm gonna hand over to some of our audience. And so the first question I've got is from Alex Rocker, and he says, how important is identifying and creating value to the business a driver for adopting new technologies or emerging technologies?
Yes, a fantastic question, Alex. And I think it's a big one. Let's see if we can answer that between us, Rob. Um, or no one in an organization knows absolutely everything. It's just not physically possible. And I'm a fan of a couple of different things, Rob. One is open innovation. So that's, organizations opening them up themselves for other suppliers, other vendors, consultants, or whatever else to come in and add value. When we talk about value, what do we mean? It's not about adding, new technology for technology's sake. Literally, organizations exist ultimately if they make cash and if they make profit. So whatever comes in can't just be new and shiny for the sake of new and shiny and interesting, although we're all attracted to shiny bits and pieces, me particularly shiny Easter eggs. But it does have to be something that delivers a definite business outcome, a tangible piece of value. But there's lots of good companies out there who can offer fantastic stuff, training academies or technology companies. So I think open innovation is key, but organizational learning is key, and that's a mixture of the organization sending its people out, so putting Alex out to courses, sending him to events and seminars, to allow him or her, if it's a she in this instance, to scan the horizon, to work out the art of the possible. Maybe, when I'm a firm believer in this, setting cash aside to experiment, because you learn by doing things as well. And, some of those will, as I call it, fail now. That's brilliant negative learning, what not to do the next time. Some of those technologies might not be immediately beneficial to a company, but look, a couple of months, couple of years down the line, it might be perfect. And Alex has learned the lessons from that as well. And also, it's not just incumbent upon, open innovation firms doing this. The individuals who succeed in companies are those individuals that bring forward, those original ideas. That's something we discovered in our work, the future work from Pearson's research. But like every organization you look around in, big, small, or whatever else, the people are coming forward with new and better ideas and ways of working that add more value to the organization or those who get rewarded. And that's in the financial sense and the moving up the company sense, but it's also in the personal sense that you're doing and tasked with more and interesting work that's quite exciting, that's going to add value to you and your company and to your career over a period of time.
Yeah. No, and I agree 100%. And I look at this through two lenses. I think I look at this question with my lean lens and say, you starting with value and customer value and looking at how those new technologies can deliver that value you've got today better is absolutely, number one. But then exactly as you say, you've also got to be looking and being more innovative. You've got to have that open innovation opportunity and look for not the things you're doing today, but the things you're not doing today that you should be doing tomorrow. So you've got to have that good balance between the two. But value is the bottom line.
Yeah, too many people put here's the technology, now where's the problem? I go with, like, what's the business strategy? Okay, how are we going to deliver it? RPA, AI, digital. It might be the combination of all three. It usually is. There's no one tool that can answer everything. But when you understand where you're going, when you know the outcome has to be profit or cash or whatever it needs to be for your enterprise, now you understand the problem. Now, what technologies, process redesign, or what do we need to do? Start with that end, not with here's the shiny technology. We'll now find the problem. Every time.
Fun though it might be.
Unless you're lucky.
But the second question I've got here, I've got to read this one out because it's come from the boss. So Ed Brooks has left us a question, founder of the RPA Academy, and he asks, does all this technology make work more human or less human?
Oh, really good question. I'll give you my view of it, and then it'd be interesting to hear yours as well. There's a great phrase that I heard a while ago that we try and live by, and that is called taking the robot out of the human. Yeah. And what we mean by that is everybody goes into a career with all the greatest excitement that you can muster, and we all want to make a difference in the world. We truly, truly do. And what we end up doing very often is getting stuck with, process that are, or maybe sometimes for process sake, we get stuck with, technology that maybe doesn't work perfectly. And I'm thinking back through my career here, and we end up doing more mundane stuff. And I look back 2 or 3 jobs thinking of just the amount of time that I spent doing stuff.
Yeah.
So what I love doing and have done now for a couple of years, and what we aim for in Pearson as well, is if we can automate routine work. And that's not to say, and I have to be really clear here, Rob, that that work is not valuable. It is valuable work. That work needs done. You need to get an invoice into your computer system to pay your suppliers, to earn your money, to drive your business, whatever else. But just because, a person can do it doesn't mean they actually should. So if you use something like robotics, AI, OCR, digital technology, all those things to take away the routine, monotonous but valuable work, free the person up, A, to get home at night, B, to, have the mental energy to think of new and innovative ways to work, to go back to Alex's question. I think that's what he was leaning at. All the better you can, you'll feel happier about your work, you'll feel more engaged in your work, you'll want to come to work that next day, you will want to develop new and better ways of working when the monotonous but essential stuff is gone. And I say the essential stuff because you ought to have cleared out all the stuff that isn't going to add value. So I'm a firm believer in taking the robot out of the person and letting the automation technology do that, and letting the person do the stuff that excites them, that they're brilliant at, that they employ all their innate human skills, the deductive reasoning, the judgment, the decision making, the engaging with other people in their enterprise. That's the stuff that truly adds value to an organization. That's my way of working. That's our way of working. I look back, it wasn't always like that. I look to where I am now and say, thank goodness it is. What's your thoughts?
Yes, well, I agree with everything there, and I'll go back to actually the very first pilot that I ran, and this is going back 7 years with automation, and we ran the pilot. The pilot ran fine. The people loved it, but it was just a pilot, and we had to take it away while they made the decision about financing and next steps. And I was constantly getting phone calls going, "How am I supposed to do my job now?" And we'd only run the pilot. We'd only run the pilot for 6 weeks, and in that 6 weeks, they just couldn't in their mindset go back to that old mundane way of doing the work. And it is. I think I absolutely firmly believe that it does take the robot out of the human. It really does make people use their more human skills more regularly. And I saw that day one. All those years ago. And I've seen it many more times since.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting part. I think if anybody was offered that, they'd be excited by it, And again, it goes back, in case we missed some points here, and I don't want to deviate off Ed's question too much. One of the things is that's very true of pilots. You go in and you do a pilot, and then you need to make sure that you do it well, you learn your lessons, you communicate the value that it is delivered, you get your audience talking about it, not necessarily you who may be perceived as biased having run the project. You put value around that, be it hours back to the business, improved SLAs or whatever else, and you have your next processes ready to go and outline the value that you're going to deliver. And as you're doing the pilot, bring whoever makes the decision on the money with you, and say you're ready to go on the next 10 processes that are going to deliver the following. I've seen too many projects stall by not having the next 10 lined up, or that permission to go ahead, not having brought your stakeholders or IT or someone with you. So just be really conscious and careful with that.
I've got one last question from Asmedo, and I'm going to have to try and rephrase it, because I think there's a bit of a typo in here. But what do you think are the fears of professionals? He says below year 2000, so I'm guessing sort of our age group.
I've seen it in YouTube, so your age group, Rob, I'll pretend different.
My age group. So what are the fears of this age group in learning new technologies and experimenting with self-training?
I don't know if I can answer this one, because I am pre-2000. If I can answer, because I've always had a thirst for learning, if that makes sense. And if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see that I have, done a lot of different things, and a lot of formal education, a ton of informal stuff that's not on it. And I've tried to reinvent myself and my skill base to make me valuable in the workplace every, 4 or 5 years, thereabouts. And therefore, learning is both essential for me in my career, and I would recommend it in everyone's career as well, this continual lifelong learning and value adding. Learning for earning, I think, is the phrase. But I love learning for learning's sake, and I really enjoy the reading about RPA, AI, digital, people, process. I find it fascinating. Brilliant career to be in, changing technology, because there's always something new and some new value to deliver, new organizations to work in. So I struggle to understand it on the basis that that's not me. You and I've talked many a time. It's not you either. We're vintage as well here in this one here. But I can imagine, and it's imagining only because I've seen friends around me or people who maybe have struggled in their careers when they haven't embraced change. They like doing the stuff they've always done in the way they've always done it. Well, whilst you're not moving on, and it's not a deliberate choice, just the way people prefer to work, technology, business, consumer needs and wants, they're all changing. So if you leave yourself static, for want of a better phrase, you could find yourself in trouble, because the skills that you once had and the value that you delivered over time is probably going to change, because the world around us is changing. But change can be difficult. There's lots of us who can be quite risk averse, and that's human nature. It just is. And there's been tons of studies done that the older you get, the more risk averse you are. When you see, in particular, maybe learning languages, kids have no fear. They just make mistakes. It doesn't bother them. As adults, I think sometimes we get self-conscious. I'm not self-conscious, trust me. There's lots of stuff I don't know, and I have no problem picking up a book, picking up the phone, going online and learning. And there's stuff I'll never be good at, but that's okay. I'll have fun trying it or learning it, or I'll go to someone who can do it brilliantly. But if you don't, change, if you don't lifelong learn, if you don't put yourself in those uncomfortable at the beginning stretch positions, then you're not going to grow, and you're probably going to find your skills aren't needed over time. So I would just recommend that you adopt that growth mindset, that you lifelong learn, that you put yourself in those positions that stretch you and your talents and your skills. You learn new things that are valuable for fun, and again, for your career, for your employer, for your industry, become the best that you can be. Because over time, you do probably need to earn money to do all the things that you want to do in work and outside of work with, yourself, your family, and your friends, and so on. What's your thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I think this question is sort of asking two people who have both had different careers throughout our working life, and I've thoroughly enjoyed having all of those different careers. But it also makes me think of, I was talking to somebody who works at Amazon, and they have a culture in the area of Amazon they work. They have a culture of, what book are you reading today? And it is that's it's almost like an internal book club idea, but it's that sharing of what is the learning that I'm going through right now? What's the next thing I'm learning about? What's the next thing we should be learning about together as a collective? And I think that's a lovely culture. And it does sort of stimulate that growth mindset, as you was talking about. So I think there are so many things. I think once you get into that mindset as well, there are so many things I'd love to learn. There just isn't enough time.
There just isn't enough time in the world. It's dreadful. But again,
Yeah.
I think I have to say I love that way of working as well. And that's something, I would recommend when I look at the people in the organizations that have grown the most. And maybe this goes back a little bit to Alex's and maybe touches on Ed's. Those individuals who bring people with them, who help others learn, who bring ideas to teams and share ideas and are more open, and transparent, as opposed to, what you might describe as holding on to those ideas or selfishly believing that having the ideas and you constantly being the, whatever better says, the font of all knowledge or the blocker of all things, that growth mindset for you and for your team are absolutely key. And those are the individuals that are really going to succeed. They always have, they always will. But no, a really good question. I'll pretend I'm more than 2000, but no.
Well, I'm gonna draw it to a close there. I know we could keep going, but I think people would eventually stop listening. So thank you very much for your time today and all of your insights. And we did say we put our heads together, and we've put together a list of well, not a list, an actual repository of documents that we've sort of found, which include what is RPA. We've got in there some case studies about different use of RPA. We've got there some industry analysis in terms of what some of the analysts think. We've got in there the future of skills from Pearson's, which we've referenced referenced a few times today. And I've got there's a magazine and a couple of chapters from the book that I wrote, which sort of introduces RPA. So there's a lot of material there for you to look, and hopefully something for everybody, regardless of what stage of the journey that you're in. So thank you, Kieran, for your time today. Thank you to all of our listeners. The RPA Academy is a premium training provider, so do check out the website and sort of look for the services we provide. We support technical training, business training in a variety of different formats, including the new subscription model. So do check that out and sort of see how that could work for you as a way to introduce you to training. So on that note, thank you, Kieran, and I'll see you again soon.
Fantastic, enjoyed it, and good luck to everyone online. If I can help you, let me know.
Happy Easter, everybody. Bye-bye.